actually click on that, and they can manage to look what ICPWE means. It is mainly about creative writing. So it's a unique center and different kind of writing. But I think people can browse and find out details. So
yeah. But I would like to continue on to add that you have been a Fulbright awardee twice for doctoral, and both for doctoral and postdoctoral work. You are a president of various alumni networks which related to Fulbright. Then you are a part of Gale Group Scholar Program. Recipient of Punjab Education Salam Teacher. I'm very impressed with that, and was that Pakistan Higher Education Commission Best Teacher Award. And you have publications. One of these is very recent and will be out very soon. So you told me about it, and we'll eagerly await the book launch. And over to you, Dr. Wasim.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Roxana. And here I am, and I hope that I'm audible very easily to everybody.
Yes,
and I can see a lot of wonderful names here. Some of them I know, and some of them, of course, will be known. So thank you for inviting me. It's a privilege. It's an honor. I would can I have the screen on? Yeah. So I'll actually skip this one, but just let me focus on that. Yes, there is the website that I have placed right under my name. And then, I mean, about me, you have said so much, so I don't have to say anything. But yes, there is the abstract, and I hope that all the audiences and everybody registered here has gone through the abstract, so I don't have to repeat that. Let me have slide number 2. Yeah, and I think that is the point where I would like to begin. I mean, when we say, okay, that it's now a slogan, either publish or perish, and we know the pressures that come along with that. So this becomes a sort of institutional requirement, of course, but there are then dimensions to it as well. So why people publish? Why do they want to publish? Why do they have to publish? I have also tagged, say, significance along with that, which is like that we have to publish, then we have to publish in English. And I'm saying that because I think I know there is Arabic, there are other languages, Urdu, of course, very importantly. But I think getting global in terms of being published, English is one language that we know, and I think we need to take full advantage of that. And of course, I am a professor of English, so I have to say that. This brings us to the collective tradition of ESP, which is English for specific purposes. Now, ESP sometimes is very broadly taken in terms of English being used for sciences, for social sciences, for arts, for humanities, and all the other disciplines. But I think even within the discipline of English, there are ESPs. There are specific purposes where English changes it's like a chameleon. It changes its color all the time. So I think we got to be very aware of even differentiating between what is to be the thesis writing, what is to be the book writing. Where is it that academic writing itself changes its stance and its color and its style? And I think we all know that there are styles for publication which we follow. So there is no one way that we actually get published, or no one way that we even converse in English or publish in English. So for me, over time, it has become quite complicated. And I hope that we gradually, all of us, get into that complication. But yes, there is this collective tradition that we all want to get published. And we know the reasons why, because sometimes it could be professional requirement. For others, it could be a personal requirement as well. For others, it could be a passion actually to get published. So there can be various reasons to that. But then I think when we begin our journey towards publications, because I myself have been learning and am still learning. My very recent experience I'll mention later on with the Rutledge. But that we got to have training, and I'm glad that FCCU is carrying the banner of training so many teachers of English and humanities and sciences all around Pakistan, maybe even worldwide. So trainings are important, and then the processes that are there need to be followed. But one thing I think we got to actually tell ourselves, and only we can tell ourselves, maybe in stories we can tell each other as well, that we got to stay committed. So for me, commitment actually becomes the key word. But then I also narrow down the scope for commitment here for this presentation, particularly that we are talking about the humanities university teachers. I'm not saying that college teachers cannot, they can of course, but I think we are focusing on why universities require us to get published. So there are pros and cons to that. And let me begin, and let me just, even ask you, and you may not like my questions, and don't have answers for that, but I think these are the questions that we all raise for ourselves. When is it that we begin our publication dream? What happens actually? How many times we receive some encouragements from our mentors, maybe from our teachers, but not exactly from the real people who are into the publishing market. So definitely then there are discouragements as well. There are moments of disillusionments as well. Sometimes, publication is such a nitty-gritty task that people get discouraged and they even leave actually until and unless there are pressures. That's why institutional pressures are very important. We sometimes are not able to motivate ourselves, but there is like uh, uh, a bell that rings all the time that we have to, otherwise we cannot survive the competitive world. So being practical on that, being experienced on that, but then also motivating oneself. And I wonder, you can actually tell your tales of stories that how many times you have to self-motivate. I do it all the time. Actually, every day in the morning, I tell myself, it's a new day, it's a new challenge, and I have to. Particularly when I'm writing a paper, there are so many. Let me tell you right away. There was one paper that was published. I haven't received the copy yet, but it was published in India. And let me tell you, I think it was 22 or more times that the draft was exchanged from this to that. There was this one editor of the book, and every time I would, very in my heart, I would also be annoyed many times. But I think the end product has been so refined that I take pride in telling that 22 times is nothing. But those 22 times at that moment when they were happening, of course, there were moments of disillusionment as well, that perhaps I should not continue with that. Anyhow, these things happen and we got to be ready for that. I have no idea. I think it's great that we have people from all the various universities, and I cannot actually decide or determine the conditions you are working under. We sometimes dream our condition to be the final condition. Living in Lahore or in New York or in big cities is not the real condition. The reality is beyond. So I can see, going to Jung or going to anywhere around in Pakistan, maybe Gilgit, maybe. What are the, we talk about technologies. We say, oh yeah, it's so easy. But I think when you don't have access to technology, you have to manage things differently. So it's very important to everybody, for everybody, to actually look into the conditions they are working. And I think that is where you need to motivate yourself once again. Generally speaking, of course, we know why we publish, so there can be some intensives tagged to it or some rewards if they are. I always question because I think virtue is its own reward, so we sometimes don't expect it all. But I think the pleasure of getting published is something that has no substitute. Now, one thing definitely I would say that publication pressures, whatever they might be, I think, and then when we start looking closely at the situation, whatever situation we are into or whatever conditions we are living under, we start looking at, and these are readable actually, that whether publishing is a controlled art or a technique. You may be writing and writing and writing and never getting published, or you may have the technique and you may do it the very first time. So what is it and where is it that we actually need to train ourselves? Now, once we actually write something, we think, oh yeah, that's done. But there are other ends as well. And I'm not exaggerating it, that there is, of course, at times politics to publication as well involved. But then there are some rules to be followed as well. So put together, it most of the time the conditions are discouraging. But what is encouraging is the motivation that may come to you from your mentors or from yourself. So it's very important that you keep things going. And that is where actually I want to just pick on this article, which I already shared with you in your readings. And this is the one which is about writing for publication of controlled art. There are so many things mentioned here, but I just am picking on one that is on page 775 with me. And I'm going to read it here. That through serving on several editorial and publications committees, I have learned, and this is not me, I mean, it's the author, I have learned that on average, journals that publish both themed and non-themed issues receive 3 times as many manuscripts for the non-themed issues. So I think a good beginning can be that you pick on general forms of publication. I understand we belong to different disciplines, and then we also look into the research areas that we are interested in. It's good if you can manage that. But I think if it is just about getting published, you can maybe begin your publication with newspaper articles. You may look at the book reviews to be published. You can begin very humbly, and gradually you may actually challenge yourself and look into, okay, how particularly you are addressing the issues that belong to you. So this means that you can easily reduce your competition by 2/3 and so increase your chance of being accepted 3-fold by writing for themed issues. So that is where you need to decide what is it that you want to publish first and what is the challenge that you actually want to take. That is in this article. The other very important advice that I can see on page 776 is, my advice is to submit your manuscript in hard copy. Now we are living in different times. I can understand that digital means are actually more powerfully used than the hard copies. But I think we can always look into at least reading our own article as a hard copy is very important. That tells you more than what the screen tells you. The last thing that I would read from this article is on page 781, which says, to these I would add, be yourself and write about topics that are important to a journal's readers, using a style aimed not at impressing the editor, but at helping the readers. This is very important. What happens with the publishers and the ambitious researchers is that they want to impress. Well, I don't think, I mean, impressing others should be the objective, but actually being simple and making people understand what you want to say is more important. So I think with that, I stop with this article. But I think I would also like to pick on the politics, and for that also I shared the article with you already. It's an old one, but I think old is gold many times. This article is about politics of publication, and many things have been said. But one thing I would like to highlight is that quality should not be compromised. So I think that is my stake as well. And I would like to request you again and again, please, there are publications and then there are publications and then there is a publication. So please look for quality and don't get enticed by all the various temptations that are always around you in the world of publication. And that is where actually politics also plays its role. You think you are published, but I think many times, many universities tell you, we don't consider it a publication because the rules that we have set doesn't consider it to be a real publication. So please don't compromise on quality. The other thing I think this article highlights, and let me read from here, and that's on page 259. The decision about publication of a paper is the result of interaction between authors, editors, and reviewers. Scientists or researchers, we can substitute, are increasingly desperate to publish in a few top journals and are wasting time and energy manipulating their manuscripts and quoting editors. Yes, this happens in the book. We think, oh yeah, the publisher we know. It's not about knowing. It's about the quality of your work. As a result, the objective presentation of the work, the accessibility of articles, and the quality of research itself are being compromised. And I think you become part of a politics, which actually is not much liked. I mean, publication houses must have their own politics, who publishes more, and that goes on. That's their prerogative. But I think at your end, being a researcher, I would say, please don't play with quality. That being said, I think this article lays down a lot of other ideas about what editors do, what reviewers do, and I don't know which publishers you have been actually accessing or would like to access, but there are many. It also is sometimes regionally manipulated. In humanities particularly, I could see in my experience with Rutledge or Palgrave for that matter has been wonderful. Not all the publishers cover all the regions. Please be sure. Not all the journals also cover all the regions. If they do, I think for them what is more important is what fits, number one, to the parameters of their journal. Number two, what fits to the theme that they are actually taking up as part of that specific journal. So you got to be very alert on picking, and that is where your journey becomes correct or incorrect. So I think this is very important, and I just wanted to tell you, publish or perish may happen many times, but much of it may happen because of you yourself. So please be sure what you are doing and why you are doing. This issue of politics can be actually extended, and I have articles already maybe shared with you. If not, we will make sure that they are. Academic freedom is very important, of course. That's related to actually what the institutional requirements are as well. Academic freedom in Pakistan has been debated a lot with reference to HEC particularly, and I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of, okay, who said what, but we all know that there have been schools of thought even in HEC, and that whatever is being published and how we stay transparent and neutral about it, maybe HEC also needs to watch itself on that. So even towards when we see, okay, and there is a caution and caveat that I have repeated. Number one, quality. Secondly, beware of the fake journals. I would request HEC of Pakistan to please take care of which journals are fake. This is a market, this is a publication politics, this is a publication commodification. Every other website tells you they can publish you. Sometimes you are hoodwinked, you pay the dollars, or in other currencies, you are never published. Or you are published, they say, to be put it simple, is honor is never actually purchased. If getting published is an honor, if you are being paid for it, or you pay for it to get published, maybe in the beginning things have been happening like that even in the US. But we all know, I mean, you can always publish yourself at home. We have computers, we have all the technologies, and take pride in you are published. But I mean, who reads that publication? So I think you've got to be very aware about the range of the audience that you are actually targeting. With this much, let me move to another point, which is this liberal arts model and the I won't pick much on that. I have mentioned the book here for you to actually explore. Please do that, because I think what inspired me about it was the trans and intermediate. I learned it myself actually this time, but intermediality, if we can say that, is a sort of narrative that comes out of the media world. And I was just telling uh, the organizers here that I feel like I am also becoming an actor teacher. Like you sit in front of the media house and you are being screened, and I don't know if I am made up properly or not, but you always consider, oh yeah, we are going to now act as well. We act in the class, of course, so we do on the screen. But I think intermediality is something that is to do with the media world. So that being part of humanities as well, I think it has switched to the whole nitty-gritty and the whole market of publication as well. Where I would, can we have the next screen, please, Anish? Anish? Yeah, yes. No, there is a one more in between, maybe. No, okay, yeah. Okay, go back. Yeah. So yeah, maybe I have it and you don't have. Yeah. But the details are about humanities growing more and more. First of all, we know it's disciplinary. And I don't want to count the disciplines that actually humanities cater for or take care of. But we know that there are so many. But I think research is growing interdisciplinary. It has actually gone beyond that, cross-disciplinary, multidisciplinary. And now I, because I have researched in the area of transculturation, I would call also transdisciplinary, where we see balance being created between disciplines or among disciplines. So biology major can work on music, I believe so. So can a mathematician. Very lately, I was just watching this, the plays of Beckett being calculated mathematics, maybe existentialism being part of philosophy, being actually mathematically calculated. That's wonderful. How do they do that? What statistics is involved? What algorithms are involved in that? Could be very scientific study of what philosophy teaches us. So these being some of the things that we can always look for. Let me move to this screen, what you are looking at on the screen. This is next, actually, moving forward. And that's the publishing process as I view it to begin. When I say, okay, local or national, I think we are also dreaming to get international. We all need to actually, whether it's HEC, whether it's the institution, or it's us as individuals. So having big dreams is very important. So please look for, at least look at the models being presented in the international journals, because they teach you about quality, they teach you about originality, they teach you about what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. They also let you know how to write the right, which is writing the right. I mean, you always learn. You imagine that things are right, but you always correct them again and again. I have been doing, I still do it. And of course, very important towards publishing process is the submission process, which is of course at times what we said in the beginning, very lengthy and at times very discouraging. The book that I got published about transcultural humanities from Routledge is a March 2022 publication, which I have put on the screen as well. You will see it later. It took me 7 to 8 years to actually prepare the manuscript for that in terms of different articles by all the great, uh, uh, say, the experts in the area that we were covering. So I think we need to have some courage on that, and I believe we all have that courage. So the writing the right may actually bring more and more challenges in terms of choosing the right topic, choosing the right theme, picking on the right forum, picking on the right journal or the publisher. I already told you, please, you can always negotiate and talk to various publishers, but you have to look into and gradually learn which of the publishers would accept you and why. I think one thing that helps is we all got websites now. So websites can always help you. These things were tricky when we didn't have those websites, but I think now we can learn a lot everywhere. That being said, I think let me also tell easy to difficult way of getting published. In the beginning, of course, we look for like, can we work on bibliographies? If we are writing a thesis, can the thesis become a book? And that's our dream. How do we move from bibliographies to annotated bibliographies, which actually are about writing book reviews as well first? How do we actually share our work and present more and more into the conferences as a paper? How do we proceed with presenting them in the seminars where we see the standards being raised? How our mentors and our mentorship actually expands and we get help from others? The basic lesson is share and learn, which we normally don't do actually. We don't even have study groups or researcher groups. I think try to form researcher groups among yourself and share your work. So I think your idea will stay protected if you really protect it properly. 3 books that I have shared here. I don't want to, I think we don't have time to get into the details about them, but let me pick on the first one, which is Bammer. And this is from, and I want to show it actually. This could be again something old, but PMLA, and I'm talking with reference to actually Humanities, that MLA is the biggest forum, and PMLA is such a quality journal. If you ever get accepted for this journal, please let me know. I think we will all celebrate that. I have picked an article from, this is, and I have mentioned where it is from, Introduction to How We Write Now. There are many points in here. I suggest you strongly to read it, but I think the points that I have noted down for us to maybe keep in mind is that what we are doing through writing is that we are delivering knowledge. I believe humanities is a source of knowledge, not that other disciplines are not, or other faculties are not. But yes, humanities actually philosophize mainly. And I think philosophy is the arts of art and science of sciences. So please keep in mind that until and unless we critically think, we are not disseminating knowledge. So that's very important. Reading, writing, all other activities, of course, are involved there. Now, we know that when we talk about writing, there are all the various types of writing, but we are trying to focus on academic writing. So how do we produce writing that is academic is very important for us to agree. For that, I think learning is again very important. We need to know what are alternative writings as well. And there is a range for that. But I think for people of humanities, I believe in that, human art, aesthetics is very important. Refinement is very important. That is what all humanities actually teaches us, and we need to care for. So then, of course, what is the role of the author? How actually authority shifts to becoming a writer? What is creative in your work? What is critical in your work? And who and what decides for you to be at a stage where you can really dream, and not only dream, but actually making your dream come true through publication. The other source that I have already forwarded to you is, yeah, it is about the friendship, love, and borderology. I'm not going to pick much on that. I strongly suggest please read this. We are talking about cross-disciplinary and I would say transdisciplinary ways of learning things. Borders are not simply geographical, there are other borders as well. And those borders, of course, are disciplinary borders. And how do we actually get into those borders very sophisticatedly and not actually injure the spirit of the discipline, yet imbibe and include that into what we are trying to do. That could be biology and literature as well. So that being suggested, I'm coming to Griffin. That's again, I did share with you, I'm not getting into the details, but just one point from here, that research methods can involve all these things. They could be strategies, styles, and other variants and factors related to humanities. They can be qualitative method, quantitative method, structural, statistical, cognitive, archives, bibliographical, historical, visual, discursive, cultural, so many ways actually that humanities actually speak. So we got to look into what way, as writers, we want to speak. I'm coming to this next one, which is peer reviews, because this was something demanded. Particularly, we know that humanities also, like other faculties and disciplines, cannot now survive as a hard copy document. We are growing digital, and I think everything, teaching inclusive, this presentation also, talk with you, and many other things, publication also, growing digital. You will find many websites actually related to peer reviews. There are journals and journals and journals available online. What they teach you, and I have highlighted in by capitalizing DOI, which is a digital object identifier, something that is assigned to you once you get published. But how do you get published first, and how do you get identified digitally, is something that maybe most of the publication is heading to. PLOS, which is Public Library of Science. And you can see, please explore these sites. They will teach you so much. Be cautious. Be very prudent about it, very pragmatic about it, because there are so many and there is so much online. It's like a website, and we know what web means. But I think be very cautious, read most of them, try to learn the new ways of how actually things are being done, even in the humanities. What are the sharing modes and how do we share? These are all sharing modes, digital. REF, which is Research Excellence Frame. These journals online claim that they are training you into quality. I cannot promise on that, and I want you to stay very cautious about it. I think this capitalized down on the slide is avoid fake journals. There are many, but I think no harm actually browsing through, learning on your own. This is something that we all have to do now. And I think I am also a new learner here. So I'm also gradually switching to digitization. So learning so much. The other things with reference to digitization, of course, are other technologies. These are the sites that I have mentioned. Please do explore them on your own whenever you have time. The other technology, there are so many softwares available now. These are new terms as well. Phablets, which is phones and tablets. I mean, I haven't tried that, but you can try. Smartphones, of course, we carry them all the time. How actually we digitally keep ourselves aware about what's going on. Can we have the next slide, please? Yeah, I just want to quickly relate my experience, and then I think I need to just stop saying things so that we may have question answers if there are any, and I think these things will keep going. This was my experience with the Routledge. The book is out in March 2022. It has not been inaugurated in Pakistan yet, in Lahore. I'm asking Routledge, and they have been very kind, and I had a wonderful experience with them actually. I would suggest from South Asia, I think they are very interested in South Asian knowledges. So if you really have some knowledge to share, please draft a proposal, forward it to Routledge, maybe it gets accepted. What you really want to do, I was just reading another article telling monographs are still very popular rather than edited books. But I would like to differ with that. Monographs may bring in a lot of thought that you might have about what you imagine to be your world. But I think having edited volumes become more seminal in terms of trend setting. I am not claiming, but I think whenever you will get this book in the library, you will find it trend setting. Transcultural Humanities in South Asia. It has, I'm just speaking to the people who know the post-colonial and what does it mean. I think it begins with a wonderful essay by Bill Ashcroft. the famous book, Empire Writes Back. Here is the book description. I have put the website also. Please explore it. You will find details there. You will find details about the contents as well. There are 35 essays there by all the great experts from all around the world. But I think introduction is mine because I could read all these articles and actually think in terms of what transcultural may mean and why it may mean so importantly for the future of humanities in South Asia. That's my thought. You may completely disagree with that, but I think you can make a good beginning. Let me also inform you, all books are beginnings. They are never the end. There is so much scope. We have so many articles that we could not take actually. There is nothing about music actually, how that grows transculturally. There is, we can talk about poets, we can talk about media itself. There are so many avenues that still, we can talk about, if you want to be author specific, you can talk about Allama Iqbal, how actually his thought is more transcultural than normally not imagined even. How he belongs not just to Pakistan, but to other South Asian countries, maybe to Germany as well, maybe worldwide. So can be true about Faz Ahmad Faz, so can be true about many other poets. I don't know what your area of research is, but I think these things interest us and make us think in terms of how we can do what others have not done, because we've got to stay with them. Quickly, last slide, please. Yeah, there are other no, there is one slide in between. Can you go back, please? Yeah, with reference to my personal experience, I think, yeah, it is there. I'm sorry. Key points I have highlighted: ethics got to be there, quality, no compromise, academic writing, you should know what does that mean, writing, word choice. That was a question actually, because I think somebody had asked, okay, how do we pick on vocabulary items, or how do we choose words for all the various components of a thesis? This was mainly with reference to the thesis, which the person was asking with reference to abstract, introduction, literature review, methodologies, chapters division, conclusion, index, etc., etc. I cannot say much here, but I think, let me tell you one thing. I keep checking thesis and I keep telling people, better use present indefinite tense rather than future tenses. I will do this, I will do that. When you write a book, you are actually talking to your audience. You are telling them the tale right away. They are in front of you. So you tell them, this volume looks at the implications, rather than telling, this volume will tell at the implications. That's one tip. The other tip is that the choice, actually, I think thesaurus helps a lot. But I think there are some key terms that are related to your topic and to your thesis. Never compromise on them. They may grow redundant, but I think they are the thread of your talk. They are the thread of your thought. So don't lose them. How do you, I think I added one very important subheading to my presentation, where it begins with research, writing, and publishing for the humanities. I have put changing the same. It's always the same, the human heart and humanities. Same, you just change it. So is true about words. Hamlet said, I think Shakespeare means that. Words, words, words. Words are the same. 7 notes of music are the same. Maybe 7 skies. I don't know. The very recent actually exploration of James Webb telescope has told it's the same cosmos, but viewed differently. Maybe even inspired differently. I think it's we who bring the inspiration to our world. Choose the word that you think are appropriate. That makes the whole difference. So keywords remain the same, but your story takes the shape so that it appears to be different. I think that's all about it. And finally, when you edit, there are procedures to it. I'm not going to get into that, how painful it was actually working with all these authors. They're all honorary authors, actually, all the great authors, honorable ones. But I think you have, when you become an editor, you got to have some skills how to actually correct even the great ones. And of course, you are training. We have many new scholars that we have put in this book of mine, Transcultural Humanities. So that was also part of the training. How much you actually give time to everybody is something that varies. But I think it was a wonderful experience editing this book. Whenever it is out, it will be at FC College, definitely in the library. It costs too much, I'm sorry, £200. I don't know it's affordable for a single pocket, but definitely it will be there. Also important is shaping your thought, which is part of the editing. I think that's enough from my side. The last slide actually tells you about further readings. I leave it everybody there and leave it for you. And I think we have 20 minutes and we can have a wonderful session with you if you have questions. I would love to get back to your queries.
Thank you, Wasim. I think you did a very good expose of put everything together in few slides. And we did actually get a question saying, I don't see this in the slides, and I had to respond back saying that the points are in the slide and he's elaborating the different points as he goes along. That's the way it should be. You don't write everything on a slide, and you have given the links. I think that makes for immense value. But there was another question saying, asking that these links given do not open, and I could not understand that if you download it as a PDF document, these should open. They will not open on the presentation you're seeing right now, but we sent you a link even before the session, and during the session in the chat, you have the link. May I request you to first download that onto your documents or wherever you want to. And when you press on these links, of course, they will open. If there's an issue, do let us know. I see that there were no questions along the way. Anish, were there any?
No, there were not questions in the chat box.
Yeah.
That saves me.
I think you floored them. Either they did not understand what you said.
The probability is high for that. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a good question from Firasat Jabeen from our campus. How to maintain a balance
Dr.
between...
Firasat Jabeen, I know her as Dr. Firasat.
Yeah, she's again, I think, postdoctoral fellow with Fulbright, if I'm not wrong. Right. Brilliant girl. So she says how to maintain a balance between reading and writing. If you're talking about reading to write or reading and writing in general, I think that makes a difference. Would you like to unmute and clarify, Firasat?
Yes, please. I think it would be good to have Firasat on.
Hello, Doctor. How are you?
Hello, I am fine. Dr. Firasat, I am fine. Can you also be on video? That would be wonderful.
Well, I'm sorry. My power, I don't have power right now. And so for that's why light is not on. So yeah, my question was that how do we maintain balance between reading and writing? So when it comes to writing, I think I spend way too much time on reading. And then my problem always is, okay, how do I begin now? From where should I start? So I wanted you to talk about that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Dr. Firasat, I would also like to actually debate with you a bit on another point, which was about what I raised, the intermediality. We will talk about that. And I would like to actually listen from you from the media perspective, and Dr. Sleeve is also there, Dr. Sleema Kasmi. But coming to your question, one suggestion I always give to my mentees and to my supervisees or advisees, and in Pakistan and everywhere maybe there is too much rush of doing things. We all know very normally that slow cooking is the best cooking. And if you rush, I mean, you can burn things and you can have smoke, and maybe you are not doing the balance required. So I would say reading and writing are very dialectically related. One depends upon the other. How many times we read, how many times we reread, how many times we read our own article for editing purposes, how many times we discuss it and get new resources and then again read and add more points to that. This is an ongoing process. But I think the difficult most thing actually is to begin. And when we go for conferences, when we go for, there is this simple way to begin is call for papers, which appears to be simple, but I think that's the most difficult thing. I sometimes ask my advisees to complete their work and then review their abstract. Writing an abstract of a certain length is the most difficult task in terms of that you must know what you are doing. It's like a recipe. And if you don't know the recipe, you cannot cook well. Of course, you might have a very good recipe, but you should know how much the flame should go on or not. And if you put the flame, beyond control, you know what happens. So too much reading, stuffing in the material, some people think theory is so important that it needs to be stuffed into the content or the analysis. Some people think it's just the analysis and maybe theory is not at all required. Well, I know there is this huge gap between creative and critical way of writing. And there are so many actually family stations in between of how we do things between the critical and the creative. But I would say for a researcher, both the ends on it. So I'm sorry if I'm confusing you, but I think reading along writing is something that we all know is very important. But we also know that we work in punctuation, that there are commas to our writing as well, but there definitely is going to be a full stop as well. Where do we stop? If we have a good abstract drafted in the beginning, we know where to stop reading, we know where to stop writing. Because you can idealize. Researchers always have this misconception about themselves, particularly when we are writing thesis for our PhD or for MPhil or whatever. We at that time are thinking that our research is going to bring a revolution. Revolutions do happen through writings, maybe later on. Academic writing is a requirement for the university. So I think there are stages we also change our thinking, and that's very important. So reading, writing are very important. How much, when, where is something that the author or the writer or the researcher themselves have to decide. And for that, actually, guides and mentors need to be consulted. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you made a very good point. I think when you talk of guide, I hope nobody looks at it as the guidebooks.
No.
It's a guide, and I know you said a mentor, and that is a good clarity. May I also add, Dr. Wasim, that whenever I have written, before writing an abstract, I have actually to be very clear about the whole structure of my paper and the limitations thereof before I can even put in an abstract. And whenever I have written an abstract without doing that, I have noticed after reading on the theme, I have had to change my abstract. Yes. And one of the things that I learned was that perhaps it's a good idea to write an extract after you have the basic structure of your paper. I don't know if that was your experience.
No. Sometimes it's a good experience to write it afterwards, but I think the best is to write it before than after. Wow. And that is where your real test is. How much you have really known your topic, known your theme, known your content. Because if I write on transcultural humanities, if I have not read about transculturation? How, I mean, why should I do that? Please don't do that. So.
Yeah, Arfin says that I write an abstract on an idea, but I think it's not just an idea, like Dr. Wasim said. It's about reading a lot even before you embark on an abstract, and you find a niche where you will fill in that space. And I think that's where I think for us the questions lies in. Reading, what about reading? And I think you clarified that the reading has to be enough, but then if you remember and if you attended Dr. Asif Iftikhar's session on engaging with the text, he talked about how you locate the best resources to read and to refer to in any theme. And of course there are some, I forget the name, these are those thick books that actually have all the knowledge, the theses and the journals. What do you call them?
I refer to. Are you talking about?
Yeah, it is like an encyclopedia, but they are a reference to all the material in a discipline. So
concordance. If you pick up, I think they are based on concordance too.
Yeah, because I remember when I started writing my thesis, I had to, in the library, go through very heavy books to pick up the topic on professional development and to see what was written everywhere in the world in terms of papers. And those compilations do exist. And so that is a good way to start. And of course, if you put a date to it, then you know you are looking at something that's not.
I'm not challenging reading for other disciplines. I think very important for all the disciplines, but with humanities, maybe call it a prerogative or a problem. There is too much reading, too much discussions. We are descriptive people. We are not like the faculty of science where we are not formulas. We cannot put things in formulas. Maybe sometimes we do when we get into the scientific way of reading it, or like I mentioned, the mathematics of, or the psychosemiotics of stage parameters in a theater. Maybe you get into some statistics, but I think it's about, when it comes to ideas, there is a lot of discussion all your life, but you also apply your breaks somewhere, and you do relevant discussions, not irrelevant.
Yeah. I think that's a fair point. There's a question, I think, why don't we embark our, I think it's a suggestion, it's a great suggestion by Jamal Qureshi, a CEO of What, I couldn't read that to the full. He talks about that we should perhaps make our students embark on a kind of a mock research or a short research before setting them off on writing a full thesis. And I think that's a very relevant point that he makes. Dr. Wasim, would you like to respond to that?
I just mentioned about sharing, and I didn't get into the nitty-gritty of it, but I think every time I ask my students when they are writing, that please present your work in conferences. Now, they could be mock conferences, of course. They can be held in a classroom. We are a nation who is born into fear. We are always afraid of, like, I don't want to highlight all the other forms of corruption, but we are also intellectually corrupt, actually, at times. We steal ideas. And that's a very genuine fear. I think until and unless we open up, we share and own our idea and propagate it and publicize it, we never get it owned. So it's very important to participate in the conferences, present your idea, people know who is doing what, and then people feel threatened themselves stealing rather than contributing. So I think there are stages to it. Writing an abstract could be a very beginning form of it, but then going, as I mentioned, bibliographies, that means reading. Annotated bibliographies, that you have read those books, why certain books are really useful. Then getting into presenting your paper to the conferences, sharing your ideas, editing yourself, rereading. I also suggest my students to actually have the readers in between before it comes to me. Readers from the same expertise, of course. So the more the readers you have, the more your work gets refined. So these are different stages, of course, and then finally when the draft comes to the supervisor, and I'm talking from the thesis perspective, that you have something actually to really work on and ponder upon, and you suggest things which really deserve to be suggested.
Maybe I also add that when you talk about the point that we were discussing right now is how much reading and stuff to do. There's also, like you said, a point where you say no more. And I remember when I finished my PhD and I told, my tutor asked me, how do you feel? And I said, I look at it and I think I could have redone some things differently. And he said, Ruxana, every time you read it, you'll find ways to improve or refine, but there's a time to stop because you've learned what you had to learn. And the basic essence of writing is to learn how to discipline your mind to follow a path, a roadmap that you have drawn out, and to stick to that and not go beyond that, and to make, valid and credible statements that will carry weight rather than do judgment calls with an assumptions. And so once you learn that discipline, you will learn the discipline of being consistent. When you learn the discipline of critical thinking and critically analyzing the text and engaging with it, I think that's the lesson you have to
learn. I didn't mention that, but I think whether you sign a contract with the publisher or you write a thesis, both ways you are tied to two things, timeline and deadline. I mean, deadline is really dangerous. So yeah, we all put pressures. So nothing is possible without pressures. All timeline and deadline as the pressure that we invite. So we should follow.
I don't see that we have any more questions. We are right on time.
Hello, Dr. I have one last question.
Of course.
Thank you, Dr. Saab. I think Dr. Wasim is right when he says that conference paper should be the beginning point, starting point in the trajectory of publication, because in my experience, all my publications, they potentially began from conference presentations. Dr. Saab, I wanted to ask you this question, that sometimes it happens that when I write something and then I read it afterwards, my writing seems to be, sometimes it seems to me that whatever I have written, it's too commonplace, it's too prosaic. And it's not like fancy academic writing that I see in journals. So I don't know, maybe as I proceed in my career, maybe I'll be more confident, but I just wanted you to talk about it. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Does it happen to?
My thought begins with me. I am also very non-confident always when I begin my new journey. That happens. I think first draft got to be very simple and humble, because that is talking to yourself and telling yourself, this is what I want to do. The more you discuss, the more you read, the more you visit libraries, you find ideas that either replicate or challenge your thought. So I think thesis and typethesis, and we know why we do literature review, whether we are doing a thesis or we are doing a book. I mean, I don't want to brag again about my work, but transcultural humanities, if you read the introduction, I think I left no stone unturned, if that's a big idiom to justify. Reading on transculturation all around the world, whether it was from Latin America, because that is where this movement began, or whatever. So all the key writers who have written on transculturation. And how do you make your, for that matter, my introduction comprehensive was a challenge to myself. Then also, once I had written all the details, because I remember I wrote my introduction to be almost 35 pages, even more. But then I challenged myself, now come the other way around thinking, which is how to cut it down. But then giving references to all my readings that I have done so enthusiastically. I mean, not making it irrelevant, but so I think that is my method, is write more and then curtail it and cut it down. People might have their methods, and I'm nobody to actually dictate my method to everybody. But I think reading is something that leads you to expansions. And the horizon may be beyond the horizon. Like I mentioned, the cosmos that is being viewed through this James Webb telescope. It's the same horizon. It's the same cosmos, looking so beautiful, different. And I think that is what we always need to challenge ourselves. That, okay, this is a great reading, but how do I compose it now? Bring it under control. So I'm not like very much moved by your question in terms of, because this happens to all of us. Should happen actually. That we begin humbly, we write for ourselves, and in the beginning, very prosaic. I mean, I'm a poet myself, so I don't suggest to become a poet, but we all know that our work is poetry to us, whether it's an article in Science or what.
Yeah, I think I have also noticed, I do exactly the same, Dr. Wasim. I write too much, and then it takes me at least, I think the longest time it takes me to correct and try to make it academic and valid. Whatever statements I make are substantiated, and they become briefer and briefer as I start doing that. Right. And I've noticed it takes me, I spend actually more time in redoing and editing the draft than I do in writing the first draft. And so, Firasat, there's your answer.
And technically speaking, let me add technically, I think as researchers, we all know what does bibliography mean? What does reference mean, or giving references? What actually works cited means? And I think when we get into the styles, be it MLA, or be it Chicago, or be it mixed, and you have, I think, research methods already there in a session. So whatever methods we are following, I think we know how to give references. And that's very important. There are footnotes as well. Sometimes there are notes, put endnotes differently. So we just cut down things and make our readers alert to actually dig further by themselves. And that's also a very genuinely created gap. Like I did with my presentation, many points I did not put on the slides because I want you people to research on your own. I've just given you the websites. So I think gaps are very important, but references are more important.
Exactly, and they help you. I think very informative. We are getting lots of compliments on your session, Wasim, and I think everybody is very thankful.
May I take one last minute? May I take one
last please. Yeah. You always have, you will have the last minute.
No, I just, Dr. Firasat, I wanted to, and Dr. Salim, I can see both of them there. There can be other people from the media school or media, I call it a school now because media is controlling us. So yeah, it's very important. Actually, it's even controlling our teaching, you know, the way we are doing it is just like being on media. I mean, I said in the beginning, I considered myself an actor, though I did not have any get up. So anyhow, so the term that I have come to know, intermediality, which is related to actually how media actually, because we are creating a discourse here. A discourse is being generated, which could be impacting the sociology of us, the psychology of us, the geography of us, the history of us, our anthropologies. They are impacting. Media is impacting us like it's a dress code for us. If we are not dressed properly, maybe we are judged differently. So media is something that is enveloping us. What comes close to this is like, and I was reading it, the details about it, intermediality or transmediality, which I was looking more with more interest. Because trans is one term that has appealed me more in terms of bridging the gaps or bringing things together. There got to be also the game of power being checked upon, so that the balance is created between all the groups, not that one group is dominant and the other is subservient. That might be sheer idealism, hierarchies still may persist, but my point is how actually transculturation happens, and that's my expertise at the moment. So this transmediality, where we see biology coming close or media studies coming close to literature. The other term that was tagged along was narratology. The narrative. Media is generating a narrative. I'm sorry if I'm switching to Urdu, but I think that's also very important. हमारे यहाँ आपके एक चलता है कि बयानियाँ, बयानियाँ, बयानियाँ. वो सियासी बयानियाँ भी हो सकता है, वो कोई बयानियाँ, वो कहीं से भी आता है. वो बड़े-बड़े इदारों से वहाँ से भी आता है जिन्हें हम न्यूट्रल और ट्रांसपेरेंट समझते हैं. So बयानियाँ बन. मीडिया उस बयानियाँ को एक और बयानियाँ बनाता है. So it's about narrative and narratology and how it actually is promoted. I think I'm not asking for any answer on that, Dr. Firasat and Dr. Salim. What I'm asking you people is actually all of us, but you particular, to look into this intermediality and how that can be further described that may help us as researchers. Because we are also coming up with a narrative through our writing, which is going, we imagine, which is going to impact the society. You know, all education is about getting educated. And I don't know, Dr. Oksana is the expert of education. She can talk better on that. But there are educated people who are illiterate, sorry. So we know the secrets, but I think getting a degree is not education. What makes us educated is something else. And then there are dimensions to education, जिसमें तहजीब व तमद्दन भी आ गया और तरबियत भी आ गई और तालीम भी आ गई. So all this put together, I think media, I don't know, I keep imagining is one master that can bring some change. I'm glad that FC College now has a media house. I hope that brings some change in terms of we as a society. Please do research on that and let me know whenever in life that intermediality is something that can be, that is workable and can be worked.
Thank you, Dr.
Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up. Yeah, I think that's an area that has been neglected in Pakistan, and we really need to expand on that. And I'm glad to share with you that we are beginning, my department is beginning an MPhil program very soon. So maybe we'll encourage our students to work on that in future. I mean, in near future, I mean. And we are lucky to have media center as well, where our students have, like, you know, all the facilities and
get me for an interview there, please. Invite
for
me.
sure. Yeah, that will happen.
Make it a big media house.
Absolutely. So I think that's you ending on a very nice note. You introduced the word transcultural, transdisciplinary, transmediality. And I think we really need to elaborate upon that, because gone are the times of use of sort of the word before all these things. And this is a far more balanced and, like you said, something that tries to negate the power of either. And I think that was a very beautiful way of explaining the trans wherever you use it. And the narratives, I think, that come out of it are going to be different. I think media is technology in essence. And technology is going to be the leader for tomorrow, be in any discipline. And I think that's the way to go. And I'm happy that you ended on that note, Dr. Wasim. Thank you so much.
Thanks
it was
for
such a comprehensive.
And thanks for honoring me.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you all.
Goodbye to everybody and best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you.